What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Unleashed. It's your man, Ant Walker, here on the Walkout Network, ready to present another fine discussion with another fine panel. So let's welcome our special guest back on the panel. Again, it's been a little while since we had him on here on the Walkout Network. Jason Hartley, the co-founder of MMA On Point. Jason, how you feeling, bro?
Feeling pretty good. I think I'm replacing Phoenix. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
I'm so sorry for your viewers' experience because that is a much better looking person than I am. So I apologize in advance. I am not filling those shoes well. I already know that.
There goes my plan to just superimpose a picture of Phoenix over Jason all night.
I'm Phoenix. What's up? It's me, Phoenix. So I saved it. It's good. You can put the picture up now.
You've changed quite significantly. So we'll I'm sure Phoenix will be back on the schedule soon enough. So all you Phoenix diehards, just sit on your hands for just a second. We got the Heart himself, so it's all good. And of course, we got to welcome back to the channel the man who you know very well, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, the jack of all trades, who has mastered them all, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling extremely well, sir. One nice thing about living in Houston is being able to have a beer on a patio in the middle of January, which is exactly what I did yesterday for lunch. It was about 74 degrees out, sunny, and just clear as a bell. Couldn't be happier.
It makes up for a cheating baseball team. So, of course, let's go ahead and introduce the man with the numbers, the mathematical expert. He is also of Sherdog.com, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's up today, brother?
You know, I gotta say, I missed you, man. Last week we had a good show, but it didn't quite feel the same. So I'm glad that we got this going again. I'm gonna drop my stat of the week for y'all right now. Number 9. 9 years ago was the last time that Julia Budd lost a fight before losing to Cris Cyborg this weekend when she was armbarred by Ronda Rousey. So at that time, in November 2011 or so, only 7 of the other 29 fighters on that entire card were pros at the time. So it's been a while since she's lost.
Wow. Very, very interesting stat, as always, from Jay. And, of course, we will definitely get to talk about Cris Cyborg and the Bellator main event. I was there live at the forum for that one, covering that officially for Mixed Combat Radio, the homie Matt Hunter's channel. So go ahead and check that out as well. But we're first going to talk about the main event in Raleigh that the UFC put on. Curtis Blaydes defeated Junior Dos Santos. Also notable too because we got Jason on here on the show today, and it was the first credentialed UFC event for MMA On Point. Congratulations, that's a big milestone, man. Can you just share a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. It was a 10-hour drive first off because I think I was just wanting to do well enough to where I wouldn't have to worry about gear. So you lose an hour going to Eastern time from Central time where I'm coming from in Nashville. But it was definitely worth the drive over. Thoroughly impressed with the experience and how well they just kind of treat everybody while you're there. But to be there cage side and see that happen in person, there's just nothing that actually beats it. You kind of feel stressed throughout the week, but then you get to the actual fights and you see it going down. It's in some ways more shocking to see it that way. It's not the first time I've been to a UFC show by any means, but to be that close, there's just kind of a different element that was going on there. So seeing, Montel Jackson beating on Felipe Clares was just insane to watch, and that guy somehow survive it all. Watching Angela Hill tear up the hometown, Hannah Cyphers was equally insane. And then, of course, seeing Curtis Blaydes kind of do the unthinkable and stop JDS on the feet. According to any odds maker, nobody would have guessed that. So that was pretty phenomenal. And overall, a great experience. And I appreciate the shout out on that. Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
I got a question about that experience, too, if you got a second.
Sure.
So let's talk music for a second. When Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You came out playing on the speakers, how was everything in the venue?
Well, I was up in the media room at the point for that. So ironically, I heard about it after the fact.
Ah.
Yeah, so I didn't even catch that part. Yeah. Who was that actually for?
That was that Montel Jackson?
I thought it was Jackson.
Was it Montel Jackson? Gotcha. For some reason, I was definitely cage side for that fight, though. For some reason, I don't remember that. Maybe I walked in after that because we just got done with an interview at that point.
Yeah,
and so I walked in. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's great, though. That's awesome. I think that's I love it when people break the mold because, like, I've actually made, when you want to talk about music, episodes about music on the channel that have pissed off all the new metal fans out there that think they're still in the year 2002 and Limp Bizkit is badass for some reason and love Face the Pain. So I pissed off a good amount of people that still like fad genres from 2002 and Insane Clown Posse or whatever else they like.
Please continue pissing them off. We're all about pissing people off. Yeah, that's trash. If you're still rocking that, you need to really examine your life. So I'm sure you heard a lot of new metal in the building. That's kind of a staple of any UFC event because the DJ hasn't updated his playlist just yet.
God, no.
He's probably still running the playlist off of an iPod. So
what is bad is when he comes to Nashville, they'll put like, I don't know, Johnny Cash on and they'll do a remix with like a hip hop style beat to it. And it sounds like death. It just sounds so bad. Like, what was it, Nelly, when he did that Tim McGraw thing? Like, I replay it over and over again. Like, that's what it feels like. It takes you back to the worst moments in music history. It takes you back. It is truly something to avoid when they come to Nashville. Just put some headphones on.
But then it switches to "We're not gonna take it," and then it jumps over to "Bow with the bow." So at least they're keeping things fresh.
Well, before we jump into the serious fight discussion, just on the train of music now, Ben, Jay, and I, for a piece for Sure Dog, we did answer this question quite some time ago. But Jason, I want your take on this one. If you took a fight, what would be your walkout song?
If I took a fight, what would be a walkout song? This is super obscure. Nobody's going to know this one. Queens of the Stone Age has a song called Songs for the Dead. A Song for the Dead is what it is. And I'm a drummer, so I really like to listen to this kind of stuff. And it's one of the most aggressive drum beats. It's not necessarily hard to play, but it's just like, if you imagine punching as hard as you can on a drum kit, what that energy would look like on a drum kit, that's what's going on there. And so it's, it's not that I dislike heavy music. I just kind of find new metal to be in a layer below all that for the people that think that they're listening to hard music. They're really not. But I don't even really like metal music that much. It's just kind of an outlier for me in that kind of genre. It's more like stoner rock. So, it's pretty obscure. But it would be
some
pretty...
Songs for the Deaf, so I don't know what you're talking about. Obscure. If that's obscure, we're in trouble here.
Like, dude, Dave Grohl was on the drums. That's like...
Yes.
And I have no idea what any of you are talking about.
You know who Dave Grohl is. I guarantee you know who the hell Dave Grohl is.
Yeah.
I know who Dave Navarro is.
I'm so sorry.
Well, that's the same.
Speaking of 2002. Let me chip off my black. Let me chip off my black nail polish while we move on and talk about some
Point there being though, it's like most people know No One Knows off of that album, or they know Go With the Flow because that was featured on like Rock Band or whatever it was. So a more kind of casual listener probably wouldn't know the one I'm going on there. So I guess there's me being a weird stoner rock hipster then, I guess. I don't know what you would even call that, but
we need a little diversity on this channel because I'm always talking about hip hop. So thank you.
There you go.
All right, so now I guess it'll be a good time to start talking about mixed martial arts since this is a mixed martial arts program, and you sat there to witness some mixed martial arts just about a day and a half ago. So do you think what Curtis Blaydes did against Sergio dos Santos is going to get him a title shot, Jason?
No way. Considering they both shared losses to the same guy, Ngannou, and Ngannou's already earned his second title shot, and it's just a matter of a waiting game for what Stipe's got going on right now. Hopefully, we thought, until we heard more recently that he was injured again, we thought that this fight would be happening somewhere around now, somewhere around the beginning of this year, or at least in the first quarter of it. And it looks like, man, they might legitimately need to do an interim title. So if there's any way it does happen, the winner of Rosenstruck and Ngannou, whoever wins that, I think should go for potentially an interim title, depending on how much longer Stipe is going to be out. Because if there's a time that it needs to happen, that would be it. But of course, DC is in that mix too, so you can't leave him out. So it's got to be him against probably the winner of Rosenstruck and Ngannou, probably.
Ben, do you see a path to the title for Curtis Blaydes right now?
As long as Ngannou is out there and coming off a win, it's hard to justify, because not only has he beaten Blaydes twice, he's beaten him twice in a way that makes you not really eager to see the third. Like, these were uncontroversial wins, to say the least. I'm normally a stickler for legitimate ladders of contention, for whatever that means or whatever that's worth now. But one thing that I would make an exception for in all cases is striking while the iron is hot, specifically when a fighter with legacy and credentials like DC is obviously kind of at the end of his career chronologically. I think if he's interested and Miocic is interested, that kind of like jumps all the velvet ropes. But either way, I'm talking about Blaydes being either second or third in line. So
no, can't complain about your points there, Jay. Do you think in a world without Francis Ngannou, is Curtis Blaydes the next in line?
Man, it's crazy. He is the best number 4 fighter in the world. You know, he's stuck behind Stipe, the champion. He's stuck behind DC, and he's stuck behind the guy that smashed him twice. I mean, the way it is now, Ngannou could lose 3 times, and he still might be ranked above Blaydes because of what he did to him. I know in the Short Arm rankings, we really value head-to-heads, so I think it would take an anti-Herculean effort for Ngannou to fall down that far. In a world without Ngannou, that I could see him sitting there kind of like the Rashad Evans of the division, waiting, going, hey, it's my time. I've been doing some really cool stuff. It would be surprising that there's a logjam at heavyweight, but there's only been one title fight since 2018. The eye injury for Stipe, whatever the cause you attribute it to, he's on the shelf for 5 months now, and he doesn't have anything booked. Like we could go all the way till July. It's really slowing things down. Blaydes is stuck. He's stuck in that he's the best number 2 contender type of guy. DC Stipe would jump the line, even though, do we really need to see an immediate trilogy? I don't know. I can't think of times we've seen 3 fights in a row with the same guys. So I don't know if I want it, but I guess we're going to get it.
Well, and again, the only reason I'm for it at all is because DC is already almost a full year past the time he thought he wanted to retire.
Oh yeah.
It's just strictly an expiration date thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah. And it's really 2 in a row, because for Stipe it's 3, but for DC,
right. DC fought Lewis.
Fought. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, good point. And then on top of that, like if DC and Stipe were to meet up again for the trilogy fight, the winner of that legitimately is the best heavyweight in UFC history, and that's sort of a piece of history that we just can't pass over. I think, especially if the alternative is Stipe versus Ngannou too, which granted, I'm interested in seeing that fight, but I'm kind of more interested in history. So should be very interesting there. But one thing for sure, I think it's safe to say that there is no bigger fan of Jaron Rosenstruck than Curtis Blaydes right now. So that is probably the best hope he has. And then you have to hope that there's more chaos developing between DC and Stipe in order for Blaydes to potentially sneak through there. Because even you think about his style, granted, he did knock out Dos Santos on the feet. And as you pointed out earlier, Jason, like that's not something that most odds makers would ever have put their money on. But I mean, he did, and you see rapid improvement in his stand-up. We already know what he's capable of on the floor. That just before the standing knockout. I mean, I think Curtis Blaydes could be one of those guys where you would say his style means that he probably wouldn't get favors from the promotion. So even with some of the chaos, there still could be some fuckery, around the corner. So
Yeah.
if I were Curtis Blaydes, I wouldn't exactly be betting on getting that challenger pay anytime soon. But definitely get your Rosenstruck fight kit on and cheer from the sidelines, because that's probably the best hope he has.
Well, I'm curious now to think about that, since Blades, we pretty much agreed that Blades may need one more. I mean, if Ngannou needs one more, what the hell do you have to do these days? Uh, what do they do with Blades? I mean, he's fought most of the guys. The ones he hasn't fought are tied up right now. Volkov, maybe. I don't know if Volkov has another fight booked. But then you're going to have to, if you don't look at Volkov, who's like number 6 or 7 or so, you have to start falling. Like Ngannou is fighting Rosenstrike, who is below him in the rankings. Does Blades fight like a Cyril Gane? Does he fight a Pavlovich?
I was thinking the winner of Lewis versus Latifi.
Latifi? Okay.
I would accept that. I'd also take Blades versus John Jones at International Fight Week.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
just
I'm
good.
Pull
the trigger, John.
I'm good.
Come on.
Just why not? All bets are off. Let's just drive this thing right down the hill.
Let's not forget, there is one guy that has been teasing a return in March.
Yeah,
Anthony Johnson,
right? Super heavyweight.
Yes. Yeah.
No, he's slimming down. He's a lot lighter than he used to be. I don't know how he's done it, because he was straight up 280 when he fought Craig Jones. Like, not exaggerating, 280s. Like, it might have been 285. And then he went and he I don't want to say he cut down, but he lost weight at Quintet, and he was like 240 something when he fought King Mo and that whole thing. So yeah, he's a wild card.
Yeah, that's another interesting piece of the puzzle. You just wonder if the UFC would put just a pure knockout artist like Rumble against a guy like Curtis Blaydes, whose style probably could stop that and kind of end some of that hype. So, but I mean, should be interesting to see how all this plays out. But the co-main event also held some intrigue. Rafael dos Anjos drops a decision to Michael Chiesa. And now for Dos Anjos, he's only won a singular fight in his last 5 outings. So, I mean, do we feel like he's still among the top of the 170-pound division?
I think it depends on how you define that. So if you say top 10 to top 15, no doubt about it, he's still in there because he's got wins over Robbie Lawler. Nate Diaz is ranked number 8, so Nate Diaz is number 8, then certainly he deserves to be in there. Conor McGregor's at like 14 now, so it depends on whose rankings you're going by here. If you're going by the UFC's rankings, that's where it's at. I'm sure Sherdog has a quite different standing. But I think he's certainly world class, but elite, probably not, unfortunately, as sad as that is to say.
You know what? I'm so conflicted on this one, because his last 3 losses before Chiesa: Leon Edwards, who should be fighting for the title, Kamaru Usman, who has the title, and Colby Covington, who was an interim champion. So we're not looking at a bad pool of fighters. If anything, I think this elevates Michael Chiesa. Chiesa's previous welterweight victories were Diego Sanchez and Carlos Condit, 2 guys who, while we respect them as legends, are very, very clearly shop-worn and very, very clearly not anywhere near what they used to be in their heyday. So, if anything, I say Chiesa has proven himself to be an elite welterweight without necessarily sacrificing Rafael dos Anjos on that mantle. And it was a very close fight, too. So,
yeah, I struggle with this one because it seemed like an eye-opener to me. Like, we can kind of, think of the community. We wrote off the losses for Usman and Covington, saying not only the 1 and 2, but they're great wrestlers, and they did what they did. And then we saw Leon Edwards and said, oh, Edwards beat him too because he's the number 3 in division, which is the right call, absolutely. But then the losses really start to pile up. You go, okay, is it strictly level of competition? Is it that he's 35 with almost 30 fights in the UFC? He's. I would say that Chiesa was the bigger man, size-wise, in their fight. I would say that was kind of surprising because they're both ex lightweight guys. They both cut a ton of weight to get there. You know, the only win that Dos Anjos has picked up in the last several years is Kevin Lee, who did that little vacation at welterweight for one fight and went, maybe this isn't for me after all, and then punted Gregor Gillespie into the third row. You know, I don't know. I think his best days may be behind him for Dos Anjos, not just because of how many fights he's had and how much damage he's taken by all these great guys, but I mean, it was a 29-28. I didn't see. I saw not quite a one-sided performance like his earlier fights, but it's that he's lost so many times previously so decisively. But there is one fight I really want to see with him, and I don't know if they'll make it. It doesn't quite make sense, but it makes sense to me. Dos Anjos, Pettis, 170. Let's see how that plays out.
I didn't even think of that as a possibility, but I kind of like it. You know, one thing about Dos Anjos' recent kind of backslide off the top of the charts here, I think it's because we've seen him defeated the same way every time. It's almost like the blueprint has been laid out, and you have to Dos Anjos. You've got to stay in his face. You've got to keep a hand on him. You've just got to not give him a second to breathe. Keep him on the back foot, and you're probably gonna be able to at least win a decision. But now I'm kind of in this weird place with Dos Anjos where I think he's established enough of a name for at least the diehards to respect. Perhaps not at the point where you want to say a Robbie Lawler, where you say like, okay, now let's just throw him in fun fights because he's built that sort of legacy. I don't know if Dos Anjos is at the status of a guy where we can say, all right, let's just throw him in the fun fights. So the other alternative is, okay, maybe he then becomes the gatekeeper to the up and coming guys. So figure maybe a Jeff Neal takes him on next, and Neal builds his star power on him if he's able to, head kick him to death like he's done several others on his current run. So any alternative suggestions here?
I don't have any alternative suggestions, but I will say that this past weekend was a turning point for me. And you guys, at least the regulars here know me. Hopefully Hartley doesn't know this about me, but I'm not a very smart guy. I'm slow to learn lessons. I have to be shown
I could tell.
Thank you. I have to be shown things a lot of times before I get it through my skull. You were present for his most recent loss. I was present for his previous loss. That would have been the UFC San Antonio last summer. I picked him to beat Edwards, and I was very confident in it. I had picked him to beat Chiesa this past weekend, and in fact, the Sherdog Pick'em collects a big whiff award collectively because 17 individual pickers and 11 forum moderators that form a composite picker unanimously went for Dos Anjos. We were all wrong. We were all extremely wrong. But I finally learned my lesson. Like, if they match him up against Jeff Neal, Neal is going to put him in a pine box. I finally figured out that what made him great at lightweight does not translate to welterweight. And I thought it did because he fought Safadine, Magny, and Lawler. Yeah. 3 guys that could be pressured. And I mean, even Lawler, who is an all-time great, if he has a stylistic weakness, it is the Dos Anjos type of fighter. The in his face, pressure, hands always on you, not letting you uncork your strikes type guy. And because of that, I kind of took his referred greatness from lightweight and believed that it was going to translate to welterweight, and he was still going to be able to do RDA stuff. And I still believed it after the
back from our sponsor
fights. Because I was like, brought to you by Harley Davidson.
Oh shit, y'all can hear that. Let me mute when I'm done.
That's why I stopped talking.
Cut that check, Harley.
Because there you go. After the Usman and Covington fights, like it looks like all 4 of us probably thought, well, at best, maybe he's still like the 3rd or 4th best welterweight in the world, and he just fought bigger guys that did Dos Anjos things to Dos Anjos. But I finally no longer believe that. He is a fish out of water against the best of the best at welterweight. Maybe he would be best served to move back down, or maybe at 35, that's just not feasible or not worth it for him anymore. He's still got a future. He is far from washed up. He's not as bad as his last couple of results have made him look. But barring at least a serious retooling, I don't see him as a title threat at welterweight ever.
Agreed. Here's a quick question for you, actually, because I did picks for the night as well, and I got 2 picks of the night wrong. It was that fight, and for some reason I had Darko with his more experience beating Jamal Hill. I thought his wrestling would get to him, and honestly, I thought he won the 3rd round, which a lot of judges for some reason gave to Jamal Hill there, even though he took him down 3 times. Anyhow, that's a side note. What did your picks look like for the undercard as opposed to the main card? Like, is there some sort of general consensus? Because the thing that I'm finding here and what I'm kind of getting towards is it seems like when I go in and I look at an undercard fighter, I do a much better job of assessing their abilities to win. But it seems like when I get to the main card, there's almost like an emotional investment. Like, RDA is the former champion. I know him as all these great things. And I'm wondering if there's something that a lot of us are missing where it's like, oh, yeah, the lankier guy can essentially throw a spider hold on him from any position. You know, he can just wrap around him in a way that maybe we just weren't considering because of our emotional conception of who RDA is, as opposed to Chiesa not being there. So that's a long way of asking that question. But
that's a great question. I can't offer a definitive answer as far as our staff goes because our Pick'em contest, our Pick'em league, only does the main card and enough other interesting fights are rounded out to 6 fights if it's like a 5-fight main card. But I will say that in the chat that went on throughout the event, that was certainly the fight where the most of us were like, well, I was dead wrong. Yeah. And I think you're right on what the mechanism is behind it. There's the emotional investment and also the feeling that you know the story on these fighters. Whereas when it's an undercard fighter, unless it's Nick Lentz, who's fought like 45 times on undercards, you have to do a little more research to feel as though you can speak about it intelligently. So I completely agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Good to know.
And unmute.
Still nothing. Oh. Nope. There you go.
Actually, my microphone is jacked up. That's the issue. Okay, so keep talking and I'll hook up a different one.
All right. Sponsored by 18 Wheelers.
Well, so I guess I'll hop on and kind of steer us in another direction. We had another event that happened at the same exact time. And some of us were there for it. Some of us that don't have their headphones on and can't hear us introducing it, that we'll talk about them in a little bit, but can still hear us talking about it. We'll be able to fill in the gaps.
He doesn't even know it.
So we had that. We had the Bellator 238, which happened in the Forum in Englewood. And obviously the title fight happened with Julia Budd, who was the only featherweight champion in Bellator history, defended against the newcomer Cris Cyborg, who was coming off of that one-sided win over Felicia Spencer. Before that, got starched by Amanda Nunes. So I guess the question that I'll ask each of you, so Cris Cyborg finished Julia Budd in the 4th round, and in fairly dominant fashion. You can score it as you would. But the thought of it is this: after smashing Julia Budd, swing or miss, Cris Cyborg will not face another threat in Bellator. Duffy,
I'll jump in on this one. She will be righteously favored against everyone else she fights in Bellator, but she would be righteously favored against everybody she would have fought anywhere else except Amanda Nunes. So right. I'm happy to see her against a fresh cast of people. I commented on this. I think I was having a talk with Sherdog's Jason Burgos, and he was talking about that fight. And I said, 6 months from now, I'd rather see Cyborg versus Bud 2 than Cyborg versus anybody else in that featherweight division. But I still want to see her take on Arlene Blencow, a real 145-pound woman with punching power and solid boxing fundamentals. Maybe Cyborg does Cyborg things and just beats her into a thin paste, but I want to see it. Jessie Mealy, who was, I mean, it's hard to have a best kept secret in a division with 11 fighters in it. But for what it's worth, Jessie Mealy was the best kept secret at women's featherweight. She finally made it to a top flight promotion. Give her another fight's worth of seasoning, and she's another one where, at the very least, she is a real featherweight that's not just going to be physically bullied around. If Cyborg beats her, it's going to be like she beat Bud, actually fighting like the well-schooled and seasoned mixed martial artist she is now. Like, she didn't start to go into Cyborg mode on her until there was blood in the water. Before that, it looked a lot like the home fight. She was just outstriking a far more credentialed striker. So that's what I want to see. She may not face another threat, but anyone can beat anyone on any given night. I'm happy that Cris Cyborg is in Bellator, and I'm excited for at least her next 2 or 3 fights.
I've got a random kind of take. Arlene Blenko, I agree with you on that. That's my most immediate person I would think of. She's the only person to have a semi-close fight with Julia Budd. She's got the split decision. The first one wasn't so close, but I think that one is the most interesting in the division right now. And then, yeah, maybe you do Budd again after that. But one kind of strange proposition is, what about GDR? And there's a story here between her and Cyborg, and it's not good for GDR. GDR obviously got stripped of the title for it, but I wonder, she's kind of at a dead end at this point. She's already lost to Amanda Nunes, who holds division in both, like, titles in both the divisions that she occupies or has been in. So what if she does decide, you know what, at the end of my contract, why don't I just go over to Bellator and try to get that one back, because my reputation's been tarnished for it. I don't know if she necessarily thinks that way. I would actually be willing to bet that she does not, but I think it would be the most interesting fight that they could put on. And honestly, I don't think she's really in that good of graces with the UFC. She had a good performance, but in general, she's not well liked over there. And Scott Coker's gonna hug you. So there you
go. Well, I'm gonna jump out there and say that I don't think the UFC would let that happen, because a lot of the motivations behind the UFC even pretending to have a featherweight division seems to be just to spite Bellator at this point. They put a lot of effort in just to spite Cyborg many times over the years as well. So if you allow GDR to leave, I see them offering her some sort of one of those ridiculous, like Anderson Silva signed the 8-fight deal.
8-fight deal, yeah.
To sign one of those or something, and just to keep her under the umbrella in case she decides to step back in there, and only to spite Scott Coker, only to spite Bellator, and only to once again spite Cyborg.
I mean, they fought before. Well, no, they didn't fight before. GDR fought Bud before, is what I was trying to say. And she lost that fight. GDR, yeah, she's in a very interesting situation right now as the best fighter that will never hold a belt in the company. Like, I personally was surprised they even gave Duran Duran another title shot after what happened with the whole 145 situation. But she has a previous relationship with Scott Coker. That's where she made her featherweight start. GDR was in Strikeforce Challengers. So they have that. It's an interesting proposition. It's one that I can't see the UFC holding on to the division, because there is no division to hold on to. It's the Amanda Nunes show. And I mean, just the purest example is the UFC official rankings for featherweight is a picture of Amanda Nunes. That's it. There are other fighters that actively fight in the division, and they have space for them to be ranked, but no. Amanda Nunes, blank underneath it. I personally can't see another threat. I'm swinging to circle back to where we started. That she's going to be a favorite. Of course, she's going to be a favorite. But she was like I actually, when I wrote the Prime Picks betting odds analysis for Sherdog about this event, I thought the smart money was on Julia Budd, not necessarily that she could win in devastating fashion, but she was a plus 400 underdog against a fighter who has shown weakness. She has shown that even a god queen can bleed kind of thing. So Julia Budd, who was her size, had the potential to to work in the first round. She kind of did that. But Julia Budd worked her against the fence, and you saw her actually steering Cyborg against the fence, and that was the kind of thing she could do to wear out a crazy strong striker. And then either she got tired trying to hold Cyborg back, or whatever the situation may be. If Julia Budd, this is going to sound mean, and I assure you, Bellator people that are watching, this is just not supposed to sound as mean as it is. If Julia Budd is the best that Bellator has to, if Budd is the best that Bellator has to offer, that division is toast now that Cyborg's in town. Like Julia Budd beat everybody in decisive fashion and had a majority in a split decision against Arlene Blenko, one of which was not close at all. And the other Mauro Ranallo made fun of, or maybe they were both, I don't remember. But Blenko's on a 3-fight win streak, so they're going to probably do that unless they go sacrificial lamb mode and throw somebody in a title shot that may not get there, or may not deserve it, or be 500 over the promotion, or be Jesse Mealy. But we have one option that we haven't thought of yet, who is a new signee to Bellator, who hasn't fought in the company yet, and is fighting at featherweight and has won in her last 5 fights or something like that. So Bellator title shot, ahoy. Kat Zingano. She's officially Bellator, and the kind of person they can say, well, she destroyed Amanda Nunes once before, so she's the kind of girl that can beat a Cyborg. So that seems like that's the angle that they could easily approach. But threat? No.
I mean, the advantage that Bellator has, though, in this is that you don't have to put Cyborg in legitimate featherweight title fights in order to promote her. They have a partnership with Ryzen for a reason. They have the ability to co-promote. They are in full support of her trying her hand at boxing or any other sort of combat discipline that she wants. So, you can let the division play out. You can go ahead and maybe throw Kat Zingano in or Arlene Blanco just to get that off, just to say, okay, she's defended the belt. And then come New Year's Eve, she's fighting, some 67-year-old former pro wrestler grandma, and we're all happy.
Oh, dude, so, Gabby Garcia. We've got it.
I wish they weren't friends. I wish they weren't like this.
If
they're real tight.
Yeah, if they weren't friends, sign me up.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Julia Budd wanted it.
So
I would have liked it.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, Bellator at least has the advantage of people not necessarily looking to them for the most legitimate fights all the time. And they already have this, this partnership with Ryzen that just lends itself even more to that. Like, I think Cyborg is one of those fighters, like when we were talking earlier about RDA, where he may not have built up the sort of legacy where it's time to just see him in fun fights. Cyborg is custom made for that. She is ready for just the fun fights, and why not? Because and even still, even with the lack of a lot of legitimate threats to Cyborg in Bellator's featherweight division, they still have an actual featherweight division in comparison to the UFC, who just has Mika Anderson, Felicia Spencer, Amanda Nunes, who is the champion, but probably won't be defending that belt anytime soon, and whatever bantamweight they decide to just feed a pizza to before weigh-ins. And that's pretty much it.
I'm gonna throw one last weird thought that I just recalled because I have seen it in the news. PFL has been openly discussing co-promoting with other organizations.
Oh shit!
I mean, they have already. PFL has explained they want to co-promote. Bellator has said they've been willing to play along with anybody who wants to team up. Not just Ryzen, like the Ryzen, like that Scott Coker explained that the Ryzen situation, first of all, as long as everything goes well with them, let's keep doing it. And second of all, this isn't the only one we're interested in doing. They're interested, they being PFL are very interested in another women's lightweight tournament because reasons. So
yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, you think of the best part of Bellator and Ryzen's year. I honestly think for 2019, it was their co-promoted weekend.
Oh yeah.
I mean, those cards really. I don't know, they kind of brought you back in a lot of ways. Like it started to feel like when you thought Dream was going to be something awesome, when you thought it might be able to recapture, like Yarennoka when that first came out, you thought it would recapture some of what Pride was. I got that feeling from watching that Ryzen Bellator, kind of co-promoted weekend. And it's smart. I mean, do what the UFC would never do. They would never, ever do that. Be what the UFC is not. Don't try to be the UFC. And that's what they're already doing with the Grand Prix. It's so smart. So I love hearing that. That's such a win for MMA fans if they start co-promoting with PFL. That's a brilliant idea.
Oh, well, that's I don't think I could say that any better, and I think that's a perfect segue into one of those Grand Prix that you mentioned, and the Bellator Featherweight Grand Prix for the men continued on. Adam Borics lost to Darrion Caldwell, very quick submission early in the first round. Darrion Caldwell, former bantamweight champion, probably most known to people who aren't the most hardcore of hardcore Bellator fans because of his dual losses to Kyoji Horiguchi. However, are we looking at this man as a dark horse in the featherweight tournament?
I think we have to at this point, considering that Boric was that guy beforehand, and Caldwell kind of stole the mantle. And the most eye-opening thing for me about that fight isn't just that he beat him. I mean, Boric wasn't going to stay undefeated forever, and he was just another European 7-0 dude when he came into Bellator, where plenty of those people come into North American promotions and most of them turn out to be just another fighter. Ask me how I know that. And just proved himself to be definitely a cut above that, but it's the way that Caldwell beat him, because Caldwell beat him by doing things that Caldwell does not normally do. The fact that he was such the aggressor and went for the kill. Because the thing about Caldwell, he is a very good fighter. Like, obviously, he lost twice to Horiguchi. Competitively, in terms of structure, it left him in a difficult place. But he is not normally the easiest fighter to watch ply his trade. Like, he is very much, like palette swap John Fitch of 2007. Like where if he can run game on you hard enough on the ground, he will choke you out. But if he can't, he is perfectly content to give you the old 30-27. And that was not what he looked like from the moment they were out the gate. That's the most heartening thing to me. So he certainly takes Boric's spot as the dark horse for the tournament. But regardless of how the rest of this tournament goes and whether he stays at 145 or goes back down to 135, it leaves me encouraged for his career going forward. He's not that old chronologically. He's even less old in terms of tread off the tires. He has tons and tons and tons of potential. And he may just end up being one of those late bloomer types. I'm interested to see what kind of conversation we're having about Darrion Caldwell 2 years from now.
So I do want to share something that I spoke with on MMA Fighting's Coffee Talk yesterday when we filmed that. So, of course, nobody was really expecting Darrion Caldwell to come out just guns blazing the way he did. That was kind of a shock to us all. I picked Borics ahead of this fight. I thought Caldwell would kind of go in for those same takedowns, and eventually Borics would time him, catch him with something hard, and finish the fight. And I think there was a general sentiment around some people in the know that was a very strong possibility. Caldwell's performance kind of shifted the conversation here, because I think we all would have been excited to see Borics versus McKee in the next round. Two undefeated phenoms that are just going ahead, just decapitating fools at will, and that would have been fantastic. A Caldwell versus AJ McKee fight sounds so appealing simply because we're looking for what can AJ McKee do against such a tried and true style? What's his takedown defense like? What is he like off of his back? So many questions that we can answer there. But with Caldwell coming out so aggressively and finishing a fight so quickly, now we're excited for Caldwell and we're excited for McKee.
What happened?
So is in some sort of way, I think this might have been the best case scenario for Bellator. It's like almost like falling over itself into a pile of money here. If unless I'm talking out of turn here. Am I jumping off a ledge here? Correct me, please, if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you are. I truly am excited for the AJ McKee matchup because I have to say that Caldwell is just I can't I looked it over. He is far and away the best wrestler that McKee's ever faced. Who would be the best grappler? I can't even say wrestler. The best grappler he faced, maybe Pat Curran. But if you put, I see this a different kind of thing. If Caldwell comes out that way, I think not only is he a dark horse, I think he's going to be the underdog because McKee is so highly touted right now. But I just with my, hindsight, looking at that fight, looking at his performance and being, way too high on that, I can see him beating AJ McKee. So that would put him in contention to win this whole thing, where he'd have to, do that to Pitbull. So good luck with that. But in terms of dark horse, yeah, I think so. I can see that he has exactly taken that thunder that Boric had, because I also had Boric winning by timing one of Caldwell's telegraph takedowns and hitting him with that flying knee he likes to do. Well, Caldwell didn't play that game. He didn't, and he took him down and he choked him out in 2 and change minutes. Whoa, that I learned something.
One kind of counter to all this is Pedro Carvalho. Guy doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I mean, when you want to talk about a dark horse, I mean, it's like people don't even know who the guy is enough to even do that. And if you look at AJ McKee's record, they're not that different. If you look at their most recent fights, and he's been finishing everybody, but he's got to face Pitbull. So there is a bit of a tall order there. But I do think it makes it a bit more interesting. I think Darrion Caldwell has to be the guy, but I think a close second to that. I mean, Pedro's right up there with it, because if he can somehow do the unthinkable there, no one is going to see that coming. And the people that he has beaten, it has been pretty decisive. And for whatever reason, AJ McKee, and I think AJ McKee does deserve the spotlight he gets, but they're essentially the same opponents, and we've got all this highly touted kind of energy towards AJ McKee. I think Pedro deserves a little bit of that rub as well, but yeah, he's fighting Pitbull, so there's that.
That is not a good day at the office. They're fighting Pitbull.
After what Pitbull did to Archuleta, no man, holy cow,
yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, that's why they fight. So we'll see what happens. But
anything can happen.
I think this is the perfect time to move on to perhaps the best titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. That is where we get to share something that surprised us the most about some of the mixed martial arts goings on over the weekend, whether it be UFC Raleigh, Bellator 238, and it could be pre-fight, it could be the fights themselves, or it could be something post-fight. So I will start with you today, Ben. Can you please share with us your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment of the past week?
There were all kinds of things to choose from, weren't there? I mean, I've already talked about Chiesa versus Dos Anjos. I will take a little credit for myself and say that I am not in the least surprised by Angela Hill's win over Hannah Cifers, because in this space a week ago, I said Angela Hill's performances, not just in terms of wins or losses, but in terms of how she performs, depend incredibly on the woman across from her in the cage. Mm-hmm. On a certain night, she will look like maybe the best strawweight in the sport. On another night, you will ask yourself whether she is even good at this fighting thing. But I said Hannah Cifers is exactly the kind of fighter who is like fireworks out of her. And I won't pat myself on the back, too hard here, because I'm like nursing some shoulder problems. But I'll pick Aaron Pico.
Oh,
Aaron Pico won this last weekend. Won in devastating fashion. And I am both surprised and not surprised. I have the feeling that X number of years from now, I will still be thinking of him as a promising / frustrating fighter of the highest order. I mean, obviously his his main claim to fame is that he was such a prodigy as a youth wrestler, picked up a gold gloves as well, but he was, on the track to the Olympics if a few things had panned out differently and he had chosen to go that way. Nonetheless, underratedly, because, he's not that much above a 500 fighter, he is one of the hardest pound for pound hitters in the sport. When he gets the right guy, his hitting power is cartoon character-like.
Yeah.
He killed 2 people with body shots last year, and the second guy, whose name I can't remember, and he probably couldn't remember it either afterwards. He hit him with a body shot that literally had him flipping ass over tea kettle across the cage like a Looney Tunes character. He has all the parts, and he is not a mixed martial artist. He does not have the mortar in between the bricks. He may never, but hope springs eternal when he is capable of doing that kind of thing. And if for nothing else, he's worth finding the Bellator replays for. I've spoken to Aaron Pico in a professional capacity. I find him completely charming, like the perfect mixture of just supreme self-confidence and arrogance in the best way, and kind of disarmingly humble in other ways. And I certainly wish him well. I don't know how it will pan out for him, but thanks to his performance this past weekend, I am once again excited to see it.
Yeah, I've got to echo a lot of what you said about Aaron Pico. Also was the focus of my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, but I'll just go ahead and no, so good. I'll think of something else in the meantime. But to be there, Aaron Pico, being close to an Aaron Pico knockout is one of the most jarring things that I think you can witness in professional mixed martial arts.
Oh my God.
To see Daniel Carey's eyes roll in the back of his head the instant that clothesline hook lands directly on the side of his head was just nuts to say the least. But yeah, you know what? I just thought of what my I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons is now. So I'm going to turn it over to Jay to say his before I spill the beans. Jay, I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment.
Well, I'm looking forward to taking yours. So let's stay in Bellator. Let's go. How about Sergio Pettis finishing a fight, guys? He had won his last 9 fights by decision, which, by the way, when he was in the UFC, I think it was 9-5 or so like that, which is a record for the most wins without finishing a fight in the UFC, in any fight, for any fighter. So, yeah, that's something. So he came in and he fought in his Bellator debut. He had to move up to bantamweight because Bellator does not have a flyweight division. He knocked out, and then he put Alfred Kashkanian to sleep with a guillotine choke. If you watch the replay, he flattened the guy, and then the guy it was a flash knockout, and then he came back and he put him to sleep again. So level of competition, obviously, is one of the first things you have to look at. Kashkanian's the guy. He fought Sean O'Malley in the Contender Series. He's the guy that gave Sean O'Malley his shine by ruining that guy. But Pettis, each of his last 9 fights went the distance. And I don't know if it's something lit a fire underneath him or because he wasn't fighting a Joe Benavidez, a Rob Font type. But damn, the last time he's finished a fight was in 2013. So I did not see that coming. That was the kind of performance that makes you want to see him fight Patrick Mix, because why the hell not?
Is there like a space-time thing? Is he now like the older Pettis brother from having so many decisions in a row?
I think he holds more wins than his brother in the UFC. I believe if they're not, they're tied. It's something like that, because Pettis is a 500 UFC fighter, but Sir Anthony's a 500 UFC fighter. But anyway, go right ahead. What do you got?
Whose highlight reel is longer?
Yes.
Yeah. That's the easy one right there. Jason, please share with us your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment for the week.
Yeah, so this one is got bias written all over it. So there are only a few talents that have come out of the area that I live in a place called Clarksville, Tennessee. There's about 140,000 people that stay here. It's a military town. The thing it's most known for is being kind of close to Nashville. Super dope. So what we have here, we've had Dustin Ortiz came out of here. We've had Luke Sanders come out of here. We've had a couple people down the way like OSP or Rampage come from other parts of Tennessee, but not really this area. And then John Rankin fought in Pride. He was like literally called the Fighting Preacher. Fought at, I want to say it was Pride 7. He didn't do too well. Ended up losing. And then we had Nate Landwehr, who went over to M1 and put on like 5 masterpiece fights back to back to back to back in that promotion. And I had a concern for him, kind of going in. He tends to really rely on his chin. I mean, you want to talk about like a Chris Lieben style kind of fighter who goes into zombie mode and somehow still knocks you out. That's Nate the Train in a nutshell. And he went over to this fight fighting a guy who's coming over from Herbert Burns, Gilbert Burns' brother. And the only thing that you have ever really seen from Herbert Burns is some decent stand-up, quality stand-up, not bad by any means, but generally when a fight would stay standing, that guy would lose pretty much straight up. And in this fight, he almost choked out Nate Landwehr. But the crazy thing that ended up happening is, for as good as Nate's chin was and as good as his cardio is and those things that he's had on his side, he landed a flush knee on him that absolutely knocked out Nate. And it's kind of a tragic thing coming from the same town as the guy. But to be honest, if I'm being objective about it, it's kind of inevitable. If you rely on your physical attributes too much, these sort of things happen. It happened to Chuck eventually after years and years and years of just letting people hit him as hard as he could. Alistair in Pride, Vitor in the early days of the UFC. It's essentially what's happening, albeit on a much smaller scale, not a huge amount of notoriety. But it was absolutely shocking to see Herbert do that. And I got a chance to speak with both of those guys throughout the week. And Herbert's a very respectful guy, kind of low energy, super chill dude. Did not see that coming. I don't think he would have ever predicted that. And it was just absolutely shocking. I was surprised, Mr. Falcon.
So let me supplement that with a couple little pieces of information. No. Herbert Burns, that was his first career knockout, and it was also the first time that Landwehr had ever been knocked out.
Yes.
So talk about a very unlikely turn of events there.
Yeah, he probably even more from a X's and O's standpoint, probably an even more surprising result than Blaydes and Dos Santos. The guy who's supposed to submit you goes in and knocks you out was just very, very interesting. And knocking out the knockout artist at that was quite a jarring turn of events.
Burns by knockout was plus 1250. Holy cow!
Wow. Woo. Well, somebody got paid, son.
Yeah.
So because
nobody got paid, right? Nobody got paid.
The bookmaker got paid.
Yeah, the bookmaker.
Yes. So I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment comes from Bellator 238, which of course I was in attendance for, and I'm gonna go pick the AJ Agazarm and Adel Altamimi fight. That was a fight that I didn't have high hopes for as far as entertainment value goes. I sort of expected Altamimi to kind of play the outside, Agazarm to be kind of flustered and not really know how to properly enter the pocket, get hit a little bit, but ultimately we get to a pretty lackluster 30-27 decision was what I was anticipating. But man, I was wrong. To see both of them just go for broke. All sorts of wild strikes. Both of them damn near finished each other in the same round. I wish I could have scored 2 10-8 rounds in that first round. That was just pure nuts, pure chaos. And AJ Agazarm showing a very well-rounded game in that fight, and I think redeemed the Nick Diaz army after Chris Avila's loss by a split decision to Anthony Taylor. So pretty interesting results there from Bellator. Now let's move on to a topic that, well, these guys keep popping up. Somehow or another, we keep saying we ain't going to talk about them no more. And here they go. They just keep making their way into our lives. Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship has somehow within the same week, they were able to sign Thiago Alves, a very well-known, well-respected former title challenger in the UFC's welterweight division, and David Rickles, who was one of the standouts in Bellator's welterweight division. So how does this happen? How do they keep making some of these high-profile acquisitions?
I've got a quick answer for that. I feel like bare knuckle fighting is what the UFC and MMA, or any league you want to talk about, is for wrestlers after their career's over. I don't mean to say that necessarily Thiago Alves and David Rickles don't necessarily have a career, but do they really have a competitive career in MMA at this point? I'm not sure they do. I watched David Rickles fight MVP in London, and he literally quit, while he's fighting. Yeah, exactly. I'm done. That's what it was. So I think that's what it is. I think this is essentially the place that people go when Candyland is out of candy. That's a really mean thing to say. I'm such a dick. By the way, I'm watching these fights on the couch most of the time, so I think that gives me credibility, doesn't it? Of course it doesn't. But so it is one of those kind of things where I just think that's what it is. I personally don't have much of an interest in it. I think the reason why MMA is so exciting is because it's a combination of all styles. We all know this. This is why UFC 1 happened. Everybody's like, what's a boxer going to do against a Taekwondo guy? All those questions get answered in MMA. You're not the best boxer. You're not the best mixed martial artist when you go over to bare knuckle fighting. It's really kind of the Legends Fighting League that Vitor envisions, honestly. Even if you're not a legend, though. I'm being such a dick. I'm going to leave. Gonna get out
no, Jason, what you should do now, you have to go on Twitter, take away your profile picture, get that egg back, and then change your profile name to Jason05934137. And then you'll complete the transition. So
total dickhead mode. Yep.
Hey, you think you're being bad? I wrote an entire, like, a 1,500 word article making fun of BKFC after an event. It was after the Antonio Silva Gabriel Gonzaga event, and it was not pleasant. And I've watched every single BKFC event, and I will continue to do so for coverage and comedic purposes, whether legitimacy or not. That's not what I'm going for here. BKFC, though.
By the way, this podcast is sponsored by BKFC.
They are, well, they're not going to like what I'm about to say then. Buckle up. They are buying their way into notoriety, which it's their only path to victory. Thiago Alves was very clear when he left the UFC saying, I'm only going to sign with the highest bidder. So theoretically, that means in this world, BKFC outbid one championship, and Bellator, who obviously wanted a guy like Thiago Alves. I mean, they threw money at Bigfoot Silva for whatever reason, who's lost last, 8 of 10 by knockout. They threw money at Gabriel Gonzaga, almost a similar situation. They threw money at Artem Lobov, a 500 MMA fighter, Paulie Malignaggi, boxing, blah, blah, blah. They threw money at that Iranian Hulk guy, who is supposedly going to fight this coming year, and he's not a real person. He's mostly just, two guys in a big fat guy outfit that has injectables in him. The game plan for this company is hire guys that make people tune in, that go, oh, hey, I know David Rickles. He's a K-Band guy. He has the Flintstones van. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Not really about building stars. They keep doing that by accident. Like, here's one of their best homegrown guys, if you want to say that, is former UFC submission artist Jim Ehlers, who has more knockouts with BKFC than he did his entire MMA career. So this is not, it's not really a sustainable business model, but it's one that's working for them, I guess. I guess what it boils down to, and this is where I'm not going to get sued by saying something completely off the rails. Where are they getting this money? There's not a return on investment by anything we've seen, by any metric we've addressed. Dave Feldman, the president of BKFC, said for the Lobov Malignaggi fight, they broke 200,000 pay-per-view buys. Meltzer said it was actually like 18,000. Break the numbers down, $40 card, that's less than $1 million. You're paying Lobov and Malignaggi 6 figures. You cut that in half. There's no money. There's no money. these venues they're holding them at, the Biloxi Convention Center, the Wyoming Cheyenne Reservation Town Hall Center. These are 1,000-seat venues. There's no merch. There's no deal. There's no sponsorship arrangement of any note because they don't have the eyes. So where are they getting this money? I don't know. Is this like The Room by Tommy Wiseau? Is that what we're doing here? Where is this money coming from? How are they throwing it at it? I don't know. Do they really have some crazy, bored, deep-pocketed guys that just like the spectacle and say, screw it, I'll throw $1.5 million at this. What do I care? Because that's what it seems like.
Do you guys want to talk about One Championships now?
So, One Championships, let me tell you, they are a fully reputable organization that absolutely has in no way yelled at me many times for saying mean things about them.
You know, Elite XC, that worked out for Elite XC going down this model, didn't it? So well.
Yeah, they're such a powerhouse these days.
Yeah.
You know,
one thing they did that too. They had Rampage Jackson.
Yeah. One thing we know for sure about BKFC, well, I shouldn't say know for sure. I'll say that I've heard things. They always fight in places where the pay amounts aren't disclosed. That seems to be a very deliberate thing. So we don't know how much Paulie Malignaggi was paid, or Jason Knight or Artem Lobov for any of their quote unquote stars. But we also don't know how much the guys who are filling out the bottom of those cards are paid. And for what I understand, they are getting paid absolute peanuts. I've heard stories of incredibly, like, laughably low bonuses for exciting fights as well. So I'm pretty sure there's extreme penny pinching. I've even heard stories about production wise where they didn't want to fly their typical sound guy to the venue, so they just get a local to do it who didn't know what they were doing. Like, I've heard disaster stories from the way this promotion is run, that says, hey, they are penny pinching on every single thing they possibly can, probably with the hope to maybe pay a Paulie or lure Thiago Alves into their promotion. Obviously not a very sustainable model. And yes, while we will lose the BKFC sponsorship on this show, we still have Harley Davidson. So it's all good.
Hell yeah.
I have been a semi-professional musician for over 2 decades. So I'm used to getting paid in drink tickets.
Hell yeah.
And I wouldn't fight for BKFC. You're understating the case by saying that they're fighting in locations where they don't have to declare their purses. They're fighting in locations where they can pay the fighters in alligator meat. And probably
alligator meat is very tasty if it's done right.
I'm sorry, dude. I live next door to Louisiana. I know from some gator, but I'm just saying that's not an acceptable purse for putting your life on the line. And somebody said Wyoming, so rattlesnake meat too.
Hey.
Well, this is the only actual piece of number that we have of BKFC in any way, is that there was a $500 stand and bang bonus that was issued to guys that get into brawls. That was then rescinded because BKFC.
What was the rant that I can't even remember the president's name came out and did? Like, he was mad at. Yeah, he got mad because there wasn't enough action, right?
He threatened to cut half of these guys' purses, and then they're like, "Well, hang on, you can't do that." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I can't do that."
Illegal. Yeah, and plus, like, you're gonna save $17. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah, so to answer everybody's question, their money is coming from the makers of Synthol. Synthol, when you want to look like a water balloon full of pancake syrup.
They're actually making a Grand Prix type of thing to fight that guy. They're really making fighters fight for the honor of fighting the Iranian Hulk, like he was CM Punk or something. I know, right?
They need to sign David Branch, because basically David Branch just took Anthony Johnson's medicine chest. Have you seen that dude recently?
He's enormous. Oh my
Yeah.
God, he's gonna fight for ACA soon, probably.
Dude, the veins on his arms are bigger than my arms.
Yeah,
It's insane.
David Branch is now David Sequoia. He's gained quite some size.
Oh my God.
Now
with the reigning
BKFC.
Hulk.
Yeah. Oh my God. Now BKFC needs to get Mike Jackson. Maybe at least we can get some stories from him if they can lure him back into a tryout. So yeah, we need to hit up Mike, ask him come back for some BKFC stories. All right. So let's move on from this one here. We're gonna go to the speed bag now, and because of course it is difficult to be a sports program and not acknowledge the passing of a legend in Kobe Bryant. Sad news all around, and I know he has some ties to the mixed martial arts community as well. So this is something that hits closer to home than you would think otherwise. So I want to do our own little tribute to Kobe Bryant, and that is by altering the speed bag. So typically we have 10-second rounds for you guys, 30-second rounds for myself to go ahead and answer these questions. But we're going to change those times up. You guys have 8 seconds, and I'm going to have 24. Now we're going to get these questions started. Now, obviously, my round timer doesn't accommodate these weird numbers for the time. So I'm just going to go in the honor system.
It's 24.
With you, gentlemen.
You're the boss.
Yeah.
It's 24.
Yeah. So now let's start with the first question, and we will begin with you, Jay. Can the 39-year-old Sara McMann make one last run at the bantamweight title? You have 8 seconds. Let's go.
You know, she's one, maybe 2 wins away from a title shot. With the right matchups, like an Aldana type that she can take down, yeah, I think she can.
Oh, 8 seconds on the dot. That's man, I hope you guys give me a chance to be a jerk and don't do things properly for the rest of this. Now, let's pass it on to Ben Duffy, who is always good to run over time a little bit. Ben, you have 8 seconds. Does Sara McMann have one last bantamweight title run in her, and go?
I would have bet my car on her not having that chance this time last week, but I was impressed at how good she looked. Maybe she does have one last gasp in her. Like, she looked very rejuvenated. I'm sorry I ran over.
We're just running over. Just running over. I mean, if you're gonna run over, Ben, allow me to interrupt you properly so that I feel more powerful. Okay, I can't just stop it and be polite. Like, come on now, you got to tee this up for me. All right, Jason. Now it's your turn to make me feel powerful by running over time. Does Sara McMann have another bantamweight title run in her? You have 8 seconds.
No, Marion Renault and Ketlin Vieira pretty decisively said that she does not. Lena Landsberg was a perfect style matchup for her, and that's why she won.
Oh my God!
Bye.
8 seconds. Dot. On the dot. Very, very nice there. So, Ben, it is your turn to start off a question here. With MMA legalized in France, what would be your headliner for an inaugural UFC card in Paris? You have 8 seconds.
I would like to see Francis Ngannou run a gauntlet of maybe the number 11 through 20 heavyweights in the division. See how many of me can take out in one night, and just convince the French that they did the wrong thing by legalizing it.
So it's like that Royal Rumble last night, right? You watched that mayhem, nonsense, garbage. Okay, good. Let's move on.
That was totally over 8 seconds, but I had a feeling that answer was going to be good, so I let it slide. All right.
I love the delay on that answer. It was just like, I think you got 8 seconds. Hang on.
Like, fuck the clock.
Fun fact for people
Jason.
not watching regularly or don't know what's going on. We knew what the question was beforehand. Watch me butcher this answer, though. Because I said that.
Yep. Jason, you jinxed it, and I'm here for it. MMA legalized in France. What is the inaugural main event? Let's go.
Book it later on this year and let Ngannou fight whoever the fuck he wants then, and I'm super on board for that.
Perfect timing. Kind of disappointing because I didn't get to flex authority. Jay, it is now your turn. The UFC's first card in Paris. Who headlines? You have 8 seconds.
You know, maybe this is Nordine Taleb's time to shine. No, I'm kidding. Ngannou. Ngannou.
There you go. That was nice.
Yeah, that was nice. That was
right
nice.
as the buzzer hit. That was perfect.
Oh,
hey, I'm gonna disrespect the clock and ask a question.
All right.
Would they, for some stupid reason, if Stipe and DC are doing their thing, make Ngannou fight Cyril Gane for French supremacy? I don't know. I feel like they need more people, but just throwing that weird thought out there in the world.
I'm strangely okay with it. I'm just okay with seeing Ngannou execute people. So I'm a psychopath. All right, so Jason, it is your turn to start this question off, and you have 8 seconds. Whose side are you taking between Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith?
Oh, geez. You stopped that like it wasn't there. I took Rogan's side. There you go.
I was hoping the time would throw you off a little bit.
Yeah, you did sound like you're done with your sentence.
I know. I was intentionally trying to deceive you to burn the clock, but you didn't
bitch.
fall for it. So.
If it wasn't for the bell sound, but I will add a couple more words just because I got a little bit more robbed of it. Because I suck. Stephen A. Smith, yes, he has covered MMA for a long time, but so is Sean Grande. And we talked about what he said about, what are their names? I can't think of their names right now. But he was like, oh, yeah, he's overshadowed because his brother's in the UFC. Who are we talking about? Diego and Douglas Lima.
Lima's, yeah.
Yeah. And that guy was... Yes, that dude was the Bellator ringside announcer for how long? And that doesn't matter. If you're not a fan of the sport, that comes through. Stephen A. Smith is not a fan of the sport. I don't care if he was at UFC 41, like Josh Gross actually pointed out on Twitter, which is a good point, but it doesn't matter. If you're not a fan, you're not a fan, and everybody knows it.
All right, good point there. Jay, it is your turn. Whose side are you taking between Rogan and Stephen A. Smith?
Joe Rogan by armbar. It's a tale of a guy that follows the sport and a guy that is hired to follow the sport. It doesn't work.
Actually, the correct answer was Joe Rogan by Twister. So now, Ben, it is your turn. Whose side are you taking between Rogan and Stephen A. Smith? Do I need to start the clock?
I'm ruined because Hartley broke my shtick of pretending to be surprised at the questions. Dude,
we edited that piece out.
So what if Smith was at UFC 41? You know who else was at UFC 41? Carmen Electra and Dean Cain. I don't give a fuck what they think about the sport. The problem is, Sherdog contributor Keith Schillen, who is also an active podcaster and runs the Loudmouth MMA network. He was talking in the Sherdog Slack today about, because he was kind of defending Smith's comments a little bit, and he was like, I probably just relate to Smith because I'm also kind of like a brash, annoying guy, and I'm like, it's not the same, because Schillen is brash, but he is brash coming from a place of trying to be as well informed as possible about these things.
Yes,
Smith is coming from literally the exact opposite direction. His whole bank account runs on saying the wrong things as loudly as possible, because if he comes up with a correct hot take, there will be a ripple from it. People will talk about it. People will retweet it or share it. But if he comes up with a hot wrong take, it is multiplied tenfold because people want to argue. They want to be mad. I'm already upset that I've talked about him for this long because I do see him as not just an outsider, but a parasite. I don't give a fuck when he started watching this sport. His whole job is just to ruin it for people that are trying to actually analyze and discuss what's going on. His job is literally to be as wrong as he can, as loudly as he can about whatever he is talking about. I don't know what he's an expert at because it doesn't matter, because he is not compensated for demonstrating what he's well informed about. Mm-hmm. How am I on the 8 seconds?
You got 1 second left.
Sweet.
Yeah, just Yeah, just go ahead and sneak some more in there. Wow, you guys have no respect for my authority. And I'm my self-esteem has been negatively affected, but I'll gain it back right here. I'm going to give myself 24 seconds to answer all three questions. I will start the clock after reading the first question. So, can 39-year-old Sara McMann make one last run at the bantamweight title? Yes, but she won't. And MMA being legalized in France, you put Francis Ngannou against anybody. But hey, let's just say Czech Congo comes back in town. And whose side am I taking on the spat between Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith? Why is this even a damn question? Stephen A. Smith, just no, trash. That's all I got to say. And yeah, there we go. 24 seconds right there.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
what did Francis Ngannou's nuts ever do to you?
Oh man, hopefully nothing ever. All right. You remember that video that Rogan did when he was talking about Brock Lesnar fighting James Toney?
Yes.
You ever? Yeah, and he said like Brock Lesnar is one of those guys that's so big that if it was like the Stone Age, he could just use a person as a condom, and there's nothing they could do about it. Like, Ngannou could use Brock Lesnar as a condom. So, no, thank you, no, thank you. Yeah, he.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Lesnar his last night though, man. He was like purple, and he was like hands on his hips. I don't want to talk about wrestling. Let's not.
The
Royal Rumble happened last night. Brock Lesnar was there, and it was really, 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 really bad.
Oh, okay.
Like he's
maybe I should
clearly sick with
some
something.
highlights.
Like he's 45 years old, maybe still on the juice. His heart can't take it. He's turning shades of Dana White purple, and it got to a point where it's like he had to take a minute to stop throwing people to be like, give me.
He's Mariusz Pudzianowski with less cardio in a semicolon.
Well, he kept doing it, and then stuff happened. He got kicked in the nuts. Actually, that really happened. But Czech Congo struck, I guess.
Was it possible that he was fucked by? No, I'm just gonna stop. Is it possible the condom thing happened backstage? Who knows?
Matt Riddle almost fought him. That's another thing that really happened because Matt Riddle's a wrestler now because reasons. So let's move on. He's
not just a wrestler;
please.
he's a rising star apparently.
Yeah, he's like a big thing in pro wrestling now. Yeah, shout out to Matt Riddle. Yeah. All right, so fellas, let's move on here. We have a weekend off from Bellator and the UFC, but we have some LFA. We've got one championship offering up some high-level mixed martial arts, and that should keep us satiated until we roll into UFC 247 fight week, I believe. Or is that the week after? Oh, my days are all messed up. But anyway, what fights on these cards stand out to you, or are you just planning on taking a weekend off? I'm going to ask Jason to address that first, since you're coming off of a busy fight week for yourself.
Yeah, so there's honestly a good chance I'll just kind of catch the fights later, especially for the one fight. I'm not sure what time that's actually going to air, but my assumption is it's probably going to be at a time that I'm not going to be awake.
Like 8 a.m. Eastern on
yeah.
Friday.
Yeah, I am a night owl, that's for sure. What I would probably lean towards, though, that I would look at least on that card, I'll admit my casualness and say that I don't know much about the LFA card, but Edward Foylong, however you say his name, and Danny Kinghead are both actually kind of coming off their losses to the UFC big imports here, and so it'll be interesting to see how they rebound, and so I'll be kind of keeping an eye on both of those guys. Aside from that, I guess the title fight is the most obvious thing to kind of look at here, but those are the two that I'm a little bit more interested in because of their interesting past couple fights, really.
Cool. All right, Ben, share with us, a fight or two that's standing out to you on one or LFA.
None of them are super standing out to me, and I say that as someone who enjoys a lot of overseas and regional MMA, and generally I have a pretty good vested interest in LFA just because there are so many fighters here from Texas that will just bounce back and forth between LFA and Fury or whoever else in Texas based on whether that promotion is out of town, or they need to find a fight in town in any particular month. Even having said that, this LFA card, like the bottom half of the card is all like 1-0 and 0-0 guys. So yeah, I'll take the weekend off. I'm kind of looking forward to it because the weekend after that is UFC 247. I will be covering it for the site. Jay comes into town and we party down.
Oh shit, son.
Oh yeah.
Oh shit.
Get those condoms out, boys.
Oh yeah. Brock Lesnar's got some fucking to do. All right, so get ready.
Holy shit, has this gone off the rails? I'm on board.
Luckily, I got a barrel of synthol over here. This just arrived yesterday.
Oh man, let's get our game faces on.
Ooh, that keyboard's about to get real sticky again.
Yeah, it's we're having some technical issues over here.
Caps lock all night.
Yeah, my microphone keeps bumping into the table. So Jay,
something keeps bumping into the table.
Yeah, just call the microphone. We'll call the microphone. Sure.
Just speak into it. Jay, if you can share with us anything that you're looking forward to for the upcoming weekend.
Oh my god! Now,
holy shit!
I'm cooked. Oh man, I should tap out. No, there are fights that are happening this weekend. No, the LFA card it's fine. It's the kind of placeholder violence that you can flip on, idly watch on Fight Pass, and go, well, that was punching. It's not that it's not to disparage them or anything. Just there aren't many high stakes anything that goes on. LFA seems to basically abandon its championships. I don't know what the deal is with that. So they're just a bunch of number 3 contender matchups because they're not sure what to do. I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm missing here, but it just seems like the LFA is trying to reestablish itself on Fight Pass. One championship, I am really interested in the main event of One Fire and Fury. That's the real title name of the card, Fire and Fury. Because their champion, Josh Pacquiao, however you want to call him, is fighting a former champ in Alex Silva. Now, both these guys love grappling. Pacquiao has this, we're just going to go with that, has this like hammerlock he does that it's very unusual and unorthodox. He calls it his passion lock for whatever reasons that is, because we're in pro wrestling names. So
don't call it that.
I didn't. I'm not naming it. It's his fault. His nickname is the Passion. So
feels
it happens.
all wrong.
It does. It's the hammerlock from behind. Anyway,
like the S&M hold.
So I think Silva has won most or all, if not all of his fights by submission. So I think there could be some actually entertaining grappling exchanges between this. But this will be a good weekend off from, freaking out, going, oh my God, I have to write up Rafael dos Anjos, Michael Chiesa, oh my God, my keyboard broke midway through play-by-play. That actually happened. Anyway, this is a kind of a good breather because 247 is that the following week, and we have an 8-week stretch of UFC cards back to back to back to back to back. So let's take a breath.
All right. I guess I'll share something that I'm looking forward to, I guess. And I feel kind of strange saying this because I didn't realize this was going on actually until bumping into him backstage at Bellator. But Jamal Emmers is main eventing in LFA this weekend, and Emmers was someone who didn't quite make the cut in the Contender Series, but since his loss that night, he has gone on a 3-fight win streak. All finishes, by the way, all nothing getting past the second round. So he's done very well for himself since failing to make the cut on the Contender Series. Main event spot on Fight Pass. Good look for a guy who was very close to getting into the UFC, and did a profile piece on him year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. Pretty nice dude too. So a little bias there. And also there is a guy on the card. Let me make sure I have this name right. Guy on the main card by the name of Christian Aguilera. So that guy, is fighting, and he's not recording a pop song. So that's what's up.
Right.
So I could say I'm looking forward to that. Now we'll move on to the final segment, and that is Buried Treasure, and that is where we share a story that isn't getting a lot of attention and maybe should in this crazy fight world of ours. So I will start with our special guest, Jason. If you could share with us your Buried Treasure this week.
Yeah, so let me just never mind. I was going to say pick my nose. God, what am I, 12? Arnold Allen fought on the card this weekend. The guy's on a 9-fight win streak, and he's not ranked. How is that possible? Featherweight is a great division, but I don't think it's that deep to where this guy shouldn't at least be somewhere on the rankings. And I hope this means that when the rankings do get updated, that he finally gets his due. And one of my kind of criticisms of the UK fan base, you guys have terrible teeth. No, I'm kidding. Like, the thing about them is, like, sometimes they hang their hat on the wrong guys over and over again. And Darren Till, I will say, I pegged him wrong. I thought Kelvin Gastelum, after that Israel Adesanya fight, was going to put together something really interesting. But it's kind of annoying when you see Leon Edwards coming up and there's nothing being said about the guy. Arnold Allen is in the exact same kind of position here, where I feel like he deserves a ton of credit and there should be a ton of hype. I have tons of UK fans that I interact with on a regular basis. I think I've heard one of the UK fans on Twitter maybe talking about him. So I think it's time that the guy gets his credit. I think it's time that he gets his due. He's legit. And I think most of the really hardcore fans, I think a lot of us are really excited about him, but it's time that starts spreading to the average fan that is watching most of these shows. So there you go.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think anybody who is a true fan of mixed martial arts would disagree with anything there. Arnold Allen, especially after getting a win over Gilbert Melendez and really a dominant win in a very high profile card, kind of surprising that he's kind of flying under the radar the way he is still. So, Ben, can you share with us your buried treasure this week?
Sure. It was brought to my attention this past week that Grandmaster Relson Gracie was pulled over and arrested in Brazil for possession of cannabis products, a variety of them. And I was stunned at first to even hear about the story, but I was like, well, let's hold off judgment. Let's see what exactly he had. Like, did he have like a dime bag stuffed down the front of his like gi pants? Or did he have 2 tons of weed in the back of an 18-wheeler? Well, it turns out he had.
Rosenthal.
Yes.
Rafael Rosenthal.
He had a single suitcase full of high grade stuff. Like he had, hash oil, like some high grade, like kind of pharmaceutical grade stuff. But still, a single suitcase full. Weed, really? I don't want to paint with a broad brush here, because my relationship with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community is completely peripheral. But cannabis use has a long and storied history with the Arte Suave. Not quite to the level that surfing does, and I'm not saying they're all like, the 10th Planet dudes, but there are a number of, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners at all levels who espouse the use of cannabis, and many who will tell you that the best thing for your game is to get stoned and roll for a while, and just stuff and lessons and just the kinesthetics will stick in your head. You'll level up doing this. But nonetheless, he's a red belt, a 9th degree red belt. For those who aren't familiar with the belt system, that's 3 levels above black. There's 2 coral belts in between. In the entire history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, I'd have to sit down and start writing down names, but there have been 15 or 20 red belts, dead or alive, tops. As far as I'm concerned, this is like when Willie Nelson got charged for weed back in the 90s. Relson Gracie should have the right to have eyes as red as his belt any damn time he pleases, any place in the world, from now until the day he dies. So free Relson Gracie and give him back his shit. That's my buried treasure.
Wow, beautiful, beautifully said. Jay, please share with us your buried treasure this week.
Well, it turns out we're going to actually stay in the drug community for this one. So, back in the World Series of Fighting, this is before it turned to the Professional Fighters League, the organization brought a couple fighters of notoriety to the organization. One of them was Ben Fodor, who was a martial artist and also a vigilante superhero. In the city of Seattle, he wore a cape. He stopped crimes and he helped feed homeless and he had a little a net gun, when it kind of catches people. So he was the walk around, patrol the street superhero kind of type. So he fought in the promotion as I believe he was as Phoenix Jones, just unmasked because you can't wear a mask into the ring. This isn't Pride, Dos Caras Jr. So anyway, Benjamin Fodor, who is a crime fighter and I believe retired MMA fighter, was arrested for stealing drugs. And he
Wow.
And so this gentleman who has fought crime for years and created a superhero, I guess is the word, organization of local crime stoppers, like a suited up neighborhood watch, essentially, to stop these things, is dealing ecstasy to multiple people and got caught up in a sting where obviously an officer, an unmarked officer, bought from him and then arranged future payments and then arranged okay, we'll come on Fridays to get things up, that kind of arrangement, and handed them little brown paper bags full of ecstasy, MDMA, what do they call it now? Molly, whatever. The point is, he and his whomever they are got nailed, and he also got busted for cocaine and other blue narcotic substances. So,
wow.
Unfortunately, the Cape Crusader is he's fallen on some hard times. So let's get bumming here and talk about Phoenix Jones dealing drugs.
Damn. You die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There you go.
Good Lord. I did not expect to hear that. And I guess we'll keep on the theme of criminality to conclude the trifecta of the buried treasure after Jason tried to put us in a positive direction, and we just went on and ruined all that goodwill because MMA's favorite deviant criminal, Aleksander Emelianenko, back at it. He is actually in jail right now for a disorderly conduct charge, I believe it was, and public intoxication. Of course, that pales in comparison to his previous history of sexual violence. But, once a criminal, you got to stay down the path, I guess he decided. But the good news for all of you people who say stick to sports, this will not affect his booking at ACA. He will be out of jail in time to resume training and go ahead and fight in ACA on April 7th. So also ACA, I think they've also signed Desmond Green, who is currently on the outskirts of the legal system right now because he has pending vehicular manslaughter charges and likely drug charges related to that too, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess when your promotion is run by a dictator who likes to slaughter people indiscriminately, a little drunk driving just ain't that big of a deal, I guess. So there's that.
They're also pretty excited that they can pay post-fight bonuses and cigarettes, and the guys are happy to take it.
I'd actually take mine in ramen noodles. So that would
give me gator steaks.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, so I guess that wraps up a particularly morbid, disturbed, and immature version of Unleashed. And damn it, I'm proud to have hosted it alongside you gentlemen. So Jason, thanks again for jumping on the program. Happy to have you back on the channel, and definitely congratulations on MMA on Points milestones. Where can the good folks watching find you and your work?
Yeah, so don't look up at MMA on Point on Twitter because that's held by someone who goes by the handle of Mama Duru, who hasn't been active since 2012. So we have to do at On Point MMA if you want to follow the official account there. We're also on Instagram, and then of course you can follow me at Jason Hart. But the videos, of course, just search it on good old YouTube MMA on Point, and yeah, we got a new video coming out tomorrow. So that's where you can catch everything. So. Appreciate everything. So.
Oh, thank you. That's what's up, man. Ben, where can the folks find you?
I'm Ben Duffy. I'm senior editor at Sherdog.com. You can find me on Twitter at Benjamin Duffy. As we discussed a little earlier in the show, I'll be covering UFC 247 live here in my hometown of Houston in the company of Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie. Excited for that. I always put out a few extra things on weekends where there is a title fight because I maintain the Sherdog official infographics that trace the belt histories from 1997 or 2000 in the case of the light heavyweight title. Those are fun to do, and they're kind of fun for a historic quick look back at the routes the belts have taken. So I'm excited for that. But mostly you can find me on Sherdog and on Twitter.
All right. Jay, where can everyone find you?
On Twitter, you can find me right down here. And you can also find me at Sherdog.com. You hit the features section, and I'm right up there on that list. I write betting odds pieces. I write statistical analysis. I run play-by-plays for UFC cards. I will, and I should have saved this for next week's, but we'll get real with it. I will be running a live play-by-play in the arena for UFC 247. It'll be the first live Sherdog play-by-play we've had in a very long time. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to burning down Houston with Mr. Duffy.
The last one was probably done on a BlackBerry.
It's been a while.
Wow.
It's been a few minutes. So yeah, you can find me anywhere you need me to be. I'm right there in the fight world.
Very nice, very nice. And of course, I'm Ant Walker. This is the Walkout Network, so you know what YouTube channel to find me on. You can find, as you guys should already know by now, started a dual column with Kristen King. We debate every week. Kristen King, who hosted the show in my absence last week and was a guest another time on the panel. Our dual column, King and Slim. The second edition is live now on My MMA News, where we debate the role of MMA media. So go ahead and check that out to read the transcription of us bickering back and forth about a topic. Also, what else? I feel like something else I should be telling people about, but I can't remember. So I guess follow me on Twitter at Walker MMA when I remember. but anyway, once again, like, subscribe, share it, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. And you know what you got to do. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. And throughout it all, you got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.